All right, welcome back for part two. So in part one, we talked about writing research questions. In part two, we're going to talk about identifying keywords. So when we search the database, and we've been using the Opposing Viewpoints database for our project so far, when we search that database, we can't type in questions. They won't work. When we're using Google, questions are totally fine, and you can search using questions, but in the database, instead of using questions, we have to use keywords. So here's what I mean. When you're in Google, you could type, why are junk food bans in schools not effective? Fine for Google. But this question won't work in the database. Instead, when we're in the database, we need to search using keywords. So that would look like junk food and bans and school. How do we come up with these keywords? We are going to talk about it. So the first step in identifying keywords would be to highlight the most important nouns or noun phrases in your question. So here's an example. Why are junk food bans in schools effective? The nouns in that question are junk food, bans, and schools. Effective, if you were wondering, is an adjective, so we're not going to highlight that. So I want you to try it. Here's an example. Why is Canada's seal hunt cruel? Look at that question, and I want you to decide what are the most important nouns in the question. Did you highlight Canada and seal hunt? If so, you are right. Those are the nouns. Cruel is another adjective. So now you're going to do this. You wrote your two questions in the yellow box, and I want you to highlight each of those nouns in your two questions. I think you're going to find when you're highlighting nouns that you identify the same words in question one that you identify in question two. Okay, junk food bans schools, junk food bans schools. Both questions have the same nouns. Okay. So now we are going to talk about identifying alternatives. So although we could search using our nouns, they might work. Sometimes they're not the best keywords for searching a database. If those nouns don't work when we're searching the database, we want to have options or other words we can try. So how are we going to come up with those options? We're going to do a little brainstorming. So here's an example. Here's my question, why are junk food bans in schools effective? Once again, I've highlighted my nouns. These two words have asterisks next to them because I just want you to notice that these words are plural. They have an S at the end. And I'm going to talk to you about what we do with plural nouns. So I've taken each of my nouns and I've written each noun in a different column. So here's junk food, bans, and schools. Each one of those nouns has its own column. Then underneath the original noun, I'm going to come up with some alternatives. When I'm thinking about alternatives, there's 4 different things I can consider. I always want to write down the singular version of a noun. So instead of bans, I want to write ban. Instead of schools, I want to write school. When I'm searching the database, it's always best to use singular versions of keywords. I'm also going to want to think about synonyms. Synonyms are words that mean the same thing. So unhealthy food would be a synonym for junk food. Prohibit prohibit is almost a synonym of a ban. So the other thing I can think about is an example or type. So for example, junk food, I wrote soda and potato chips. Those are 2 examples of junk food. And I can also think about this says broader or narrower terms. So for example, I have school or schools, and a broader term might be district. So when you're trying to come up with alternative words, if you're stuck, I want you to think about singular versions of a word, if you can come up with any words that mean the same thing, if you can come up with an example or a type that just a type of that word, or if you can come up with a broader or narrower term, that might be helpful. So here's one for you to try yourself. The nouns in this sentence are administrators, students, earbuds, and Durgee Junior High. So I've written each of those words in a column, and I want you to take a couple minutes, hit pause, and see if you can come up with alternatives. Is this what you said? So here we found the singular, administrators, and then some synonyms might be principal, School board is probably a term that is broader. Some more synonyms: students. We obviously changed that to singular, but then some synonyms might be kid or teenager. Baldwinsville is going to be one of those words that's broader than Durgee Junior High. So now it's your turn. You're going to take the nouns you identified in your questions. Remember, you highlighted them orange, and each one of those nouns is going to go in its own column, and then you are going to see if you can come up with alternatives for each of those nouns. Remember, you're thinking about singular versions, synonyms, examples, or broader or narrower words. So when you've done that, the very last thing we're going to talk about is connecting your keywords. The database is going to give you more articles if you connect your keywords using the word and. For example, if I type into the search box on the database, junk food and ban and school, I'm going to get 100 articles back. But if I type junk food, ban, school, I'm only going to get 10 articles. So when you search the database, it's really important to connect your words with the word and. When you connect your keywords with the word and, you are writing something called a search string. So a search string is just a bunch of keywords connected with the word and. Here's an example: junk food and ban and school. That's a search string because I have keywords connected with the word and. So you are going to go ahead and identify 4 search strings. You're going to use your columns, and you're going to pick different combinations from each column in order to come up with search strings. So you could pick one word from each column and connect those words with the word and. Search string 2, you're going to pick a different combination of words. Search string 3, a different combination of words. And search string 4, you would do a different combination of words. When we go to the database tomorrow, you're going to be trying these different search strings. Because you've used one set of nouns for both of your questions, when an article pops up, you're going to have to read the article and decide, is that a left shoe article or a right shoe article? Okay, because we picked nouns to include in our search string, the articles that come up, we aren't going to know till we read the article if it's a left shoe article or a right shoe article. So we need to kind of preview that idea, because tomorrow when we search the databases, these keywords and search strings are going to be awesome, but you are just going to have to read the article to decide, do I put this with right shoe information or left shoe information? And that sums things up for today, and we will get started searching the database tomorrow.